it up, pump it up.
Trae.
Come on, come on.
With Trae.
Pump it up, pump it up.
It's the day with Trae.
This is the day to gain inspiration, to make a positive change in the nation. We're inviting you to partake in conversation, to raise your vibration. It's the day that we will all celebrate all of our peeps that make this thing elevate. Watch the negative fade away, cause it's the day with Trae.
Grand Rising, everyone. Welcome to the Day with Trae. I'm your host, Trae Holiday. I want to thank you for starting your week off with me. Of course, I get to have some amazing guests on today and welcome you to a magnificent Monday. I get the opportunity to speak to a jazz legend in the building with me. Gary Hammond is here. We'll be talking to him first, otherwise known as Jubal out there in the music scene. And later on in the show, we're talking to radio and podcast show host Blaze Vincent, all about his new show. It's now been a couple of months, so I don't know how new it is anymore, on Rainier Ave Radio, called Centering Voices. So I'm so glad both of them are in the building with me today. Of course, it's the top of the show, so it's a great time for you to tag and share this stream right here. Go ahead and participate us in our growth as you share this show with folks who you feel could benefit from a daily dose of dopeness right here on The Day with Trae. If you can't watch us, we still have you covered. You can listen to us anywhere you find your favorite podcast. Just search Converge Media Network in The Day with Trae. You'll find me on whichever platform is your favorite. Well, up next, y'all, I have the pleasure and the honor of talking to the Gary Hammond. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm well.
It's so good to be with you today.
It is good to be here.
Well, you and I started talking a little bit, and I just got to go to the beginnings. What got you into jazz? What got you to become a musician in your early days?
Well, I guess it was inevitable. My brother played, and people would rehearse in my house, but before that, my parents would have these amazing parties, which would be different people from different backgrounds and different ethnic music. Then late at night, they'd start playing jazz music. Well, Gene Ammons stuck out like a sore thumb to me, who was a great saxophonist. And I loved the sound of that saxophone, the tenor saxophone. It's funny, I knew exactly which horn I wanted to play if I was going to play one. But I was very shy about it. And then I liked violin, but I couldn't say I wanted to play violin because I had brothers. And I knew that would be a war. You want to play what, a violin? Oh, no way. So I said, okay, saxophone, tenor saxophone. So when my parents would have these parties, I would be up in the bed as a little guy, and I'd be mimicking playing a saxophone. Now the two gurus that would be in my parents' squad was Larry Gossett's father, Naman Gossett, and then Rocky Woods. Rocky Woods was either a baritone or a tenor, somewhere around here for the Seattle Symphony. And Mr. Gossett was just a connoisseur of the music. He knew all the history, he had all the records, and every time he'd get something new, he'd share with my mother, who loved the music as well. So I guess having said that, it was just a matter of time. And then I had my brother. My brother played drums, and not only did he play with Jimi Hendrix in the earlier years, him and Terry Johnson, who lived on the same block on Lane around the corner from where we lived, off of Jackson Street, 28th. They were both big influences because they'd rehearse between the two houses, either at my house or at his house. Well, Terry ended up going into the Air Force. So Jimmy decided he would keep a small unit together. Of course, Ronnie wasn't quite old enough to play with him, but he put a hat and sunglasses on him. And then they would go, and there was this barber who was related to the great Sonny Rollins, his nephew, Fred Rollins. At that time, he was in that trio too. And I think that lasted just a little while. I cannot say I heard them play because I never. At that time, I was playing sports. So I wasn't really, I hadn't made the decision that this is what I really want to do.
But then there was some transition there, because you at some point you got that saxophone and it's like you never put it down. Tell us a bit about those early years of you as a musician in the jazz scene.
There was a person that inspired me, and he inspired all of us. And there should be something in his memory. He passed away. His name was Leonard Rhodes. He lived on Yesler. We both lived on 28th. I lived off 28th Avenue South, and he lived 28th and Yesler. Him being so young, and he played with Ray Charles as a child, because we went to the old Washington School, which was, behind, what is it? What's over there now? Right behind that park they built there. That park was the old Washington Middle School.
Yep.
So his practicing influenced me and gave me the confidence to go ahead and try and play. And then when I heard that my father came in one day and said, you know, that kid up the street did a matinee. He was with Ray Charles down. And you know, at that time, I was a grade higher than Leonard. I don't think Leonard was in the 7th grade. My father said, I didn't know he could play that good, you know? And so then I knew then, outside the listening and outside the constantly Ronnie with Danny Ligo, who lived just a little ways down, them getting together and collaborating, playing drums. I said, well, I want to do this. So the way it happened for me is Herman Brown, along with Joe Clark and I want to say, no, it was just Herman and Joe, I think, the first time. They came along, and by this time I had got the saxophone. I didn't start until I got into high school. So they came one day, I was at my locker, and they were standing behind me. And they'd see me with this tenor saxophone every day. I'd have it. And they said, we need a saxophone player. And I turned, because I had my back to them. We're starting a band and we're looking for a saxophone player. And I turned around, and I said, you know, I'm really not good enough, you know. And they said, well, oh yeah, we think you are, you know. I said, well, I've never played in a band before. So, okay, I'll try. And that's how it all started.
Wow.
And from there, I was, 16? At 17, I became professional.
Wow.
I moved on. I started playing with the likes of Dave Lewis and George Griffin and different people around town. And the funny part about doing that is, coming up, you paid union dues back in the 60s. So the union man would come to your job and you had to give him your $37.50, either before or after. He was going to sit there and wait for you to finish so he could collect. So I can remember him and Dave were talking and about me. And I could kind of hear the conversation about, well, you know, he's not old enough to be in here. And the guy that was collecting said, listen, I don't care. Just put sunglasses and a hat on him, and he cannot come off that stage.
Wow.
He has to stay on that bandstand. So anything he needs, you're responsible. You have to go get it. So That's what happened. And
And then you're paying dues, so now you're a professional.
Exactly.
But your skills eventually took you to greater heights. I mean, you've played in so many different venues in different cities, and you're here today because folks don't understand the rich history that Seattle has when it comes to jazz. What is that top thing that you want to make sure folks understand about the history of jazz
well, one
here
of
in
the
the
things
city?
I want them to understand about the origin and the history of the music here is that everything has a beginning and it starts somewhere. When you talk about the music, one of the unique things I loved about being in Seattle is I learned to play rhythm and blues. My first recording was with Calvin Law on Sweet Soul Lady. It's on the Topaz label. So that was my very first recording. But we could also play standard tunes because you had to be able to play. And when I say standard tunes, we can say out of the Cole Porter book, or so you had to do that. Seattle was a jazz town. Pony Poindexter, along with several others, over where the Safeway store is right now on 23rd, those Birdland. Terry Johnson's father cut everyone's hair, so Dexter Gordon, Moody, and different people would come into town and from out of town because they knew that Seattle was a jazz town and you could make a living. So to sum it up, you had a twofold here. You had a town where you could hear great musicians like Roy Moore. People don't talk about him. And you had Oscar Holden, who I spoke about, and you had Overton Berry and some of these other folks that were playing nightly, that were bringing in national acts like Cal Jader and different folks. They were bringing those people here to Seattle, but you could make a living. So also, they were able to, they were diverse in their creativity. Mm-hmm. They could play funk music and play songs that made people dance, because dancing was something that also happened when jazz musicians played. Mm-hmm. But somewhere along the line, because you asked me the golden question, we wanted to up our craft. We wanted to become more accomplished and have the music more recognized for the spirituality, for what you could do with it. Mm-hmm. So Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker certainly changed the whole tone of things from Louis Armstrong times.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. But out of that, out of Seattle, came this great energy of different things you could do. The label Camelot label, Bolo, and Topaz were all here. There's a building right across the street where what is that, Domino's Pizza? That used to be the Mardi Gras. Mm-hmm. I played there quite a bit. But in that building where the apartment is, you can go in and you can find traces of Bolo records. You can find history there. The Seattle really became pinpointed in the 60s, mm-hmm. where it was really, really, everything was going on.
Well, the beauty of it is that you're going to make sure folks understand. I mean, there is almost like a jazz revival happening now. I mean, you are back here. There's other greats that you said are here. So you're continuing to do music. Tell us about some of the ways folks can stay plugged in and tapped in as folks have those opportunities to not only learn about that history, but also experience the expertise that you bring to the field.
Well, one of the ways is that, come out and support the arts again. Support the arts. It's very important. Musicians deserve I'm an advocate for that, why artists need to be paid.
Yeah.
And one reason why is because they do something that you don't do. That's the first reason. And they've taken their time and energy to do that. And believe me, if you ever sit down and try and play a major scale, you'll get it.
Yeah.
So I think the second thing that we all need to identify with is that when we start talking about what was founded in this country, this country was founded on its arts. So what we've allowed to happen, we people of color and we people period, we've allowed too much of it to go to the industry and take away our culture and take us away from viewing music and listening to it. I appreciate and I welcome electronic music. I welcome all the other arts, but don't forget where it came from, because every time you get ready to do it again, history repeats itself.
That's
you
right.
go right back where you got it from. So those are the things that are dear to me. And understand that we have generations coming up like little kids. We want them to know everything that we can. We want them to know, here's one main fact, why W.D. Du Bois was so important. He was the reason why this country was founded on its arts, because when the draft came around, and for us to be able to have rights to vote, it was James Reese, Europe, who was a band director, who helped get African Americans into the military. And that call allowed us to have the same rights and equal opportunity. And you can read about all that. Of course, he passed away after he even went and fought. But those stories are stories I want little kids to know.
Yeah.
They have to know that. And a lot of times people don't know that, just like Althea Gibson was my best friend. She won Wimberley first, tennis.
Yeah.
But that wasn't all Althea Gibson. She was a hell of an athlete all the way around. She played basketball, football, baseball. She excelled in all of it. Golf.
Well, I'm so glad you could join me today, because you bring to life, when we talk about being here under Al Smith's collection, seeing all of the greats of our time back then, and us being rooted in history. That is so important to us here at Converge. So I'm looking forward to having you back again, because there's so much to dive into. Thank you
yes.
for being willing to share with me and the audience today. I appreciate everything you're doing, Mr. Hammond. Thank you.
Hey, I was always told that, hey, what are you going to do with it? When you die, you can't take it with you. You got to leave something.
That's
so
right.
this is my responsibility to leave.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Wow, y'all. What a great history lesson we just got to start our week off. So fantastic. Up next, we got Blaze Vincent in the building, y'all. We're going to be talking all about his radio and podcast show, Centering Voices. You don't want to miss it. Stay tuned. You're watching The Day with Trae.
Disenrollment is a situation whereby people whose birthright to be indigenous is being stolen from them by politicians that have been elected to lead.
Today, the latest or last chapter of the saga concerns the threatened physical ejectment of as many as 21 Nooksack families from their homes.
I think it come about by hatred for our family. That's what it's all about.
Our bloodline is still here. You know, they can't get rid of us.
Join Cascade PBS for its third year of celebrating local Black artists featured in its Black Arts Legacies project. The evening will include performances by artists featured in the project, a portrait gallery of this year's artists, video highlights from the series, food, dancing, and more. Join us Tuesday, June 18th at 6:30 p.m. at Washington Hall. Learn more and RSVP for your free tickets at cascadepbs.org/events.
Welcome back, everyone, to The Day with Trae. I'm your host, Trae Holiday. Joining me right now is my brother, Blaze. What up, Blaze?
Peace, sis. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm just great to be here again on your show.
Absolutely. Well, this is a whole new topic that we haven't been able to breach yet. I am excited because you now have a podcast and radio show on Rainier Ave Radio called Centering Voices. You are the host. Tell us a bit, before we get into what it's all about, I got to hear about the beginnings, right? Because there's always an impetus to get something like this going. Tell us about those beginnings for this show.
First, I would say the beginnings is I always believed in the importance of Black media. And when I was on the inside, I had spent 18 years in prison from the end of 2003 all the way up to 2022. And while I was on the inside, what I witnessed was the rising of Black media, particularly with the advancements in technology. I left before there was a smartphone. So I went in 03, the smartphones came out in 09. Keeping up with the technology, then when it went to the social media sites and individuals being able to have voices outside of dominant media culture for them to get their voices out throughout the world. And then the advent of live streaming, right, in conjunction with the movements, particularly the protests and riots of, not riots, so to speak, but the uprising of fighting for justice for things that happened in our community that was wiped under the rug because we couldn't tell our story, because historically our oppression, the key apparatus is that others that don't empathize with us, we're telling our stories. And so witnessing that and understanding how powerful it is for us to be able to control our narrative, for us to be able to have a voice, for us to also be able to share our story authentically, as I found was something that was powerful for us. Not simply just to be successful or celebrity, but for our advancement and progress within this country. And so coming out, doing the work, the community advocate work that I do, being a paralegal at the Seattle Clemency Project, currently interim executive director of Freedom Project, working and collaborate with Kids at Kids, and then working in conjunction with a whole bunch of nonprofit and community-based organizations around our city, particularly Community Passageways, King County Equity Now, Africa Town Trust, Progress Pushers, Collective Justice, Creative Justice, any of them that I'm missing at this particular point. But having these relationships with these orgs is having the relationships with the individuals who are part of our community doing this work. And from that, what I found is that it's very important for us to be able to highlight the work that we're doing, but not just the work that we do, but the people that do the work and the people from the community.
That's a special way to understand, how you have a perspective and a voice that fits in to this amazing plethora that we have in Black media, particularly for the Pacific Northwest and the greater Seattle metro area, right? There's a need for us to not only be showcasing the stories, but the people, but also the fact that there's a lot of things for folks to tap into. And sometimes they don't know unless they're already involved or, somehow they come across, these organizations, but to have more opportunity for us to be spotlighting it in media opens up those doors more, right?
Absolutely.
So you're focusing on the people, and you have Centering Voices that you're really serious about that. Tell us about the driving force behind the folks that you have on the show.
First and foremost, I want to give a shout out to Tony Benton, or Tony B, founder of Rainier Ave Radio, that he founded in 2017, and then also in 2022 he co-purchased with Rainier Ave Radio and the Cultural Space Agency the Columbia City Theater that's located in Columbia City in South Seattle. That's a historical monument. It was the construction was finished in 1923, and now it's 2024. So we literally have over 100 years of history going through that building. And in that particular theater, there's been great Black artists and performers and musicians that came through the Columbia City Theater. Ella Fitzgerald, Ray Charles, Quincy Jones, and legend has it that our very own Jimi Hendrix, when he was in high school at Garfield High School with his band, the Velvenettes, performed his very first performance inside the Columbia City Theater.
Wow.
So there's so much rich history with the Columbia City Theater in the space of that houses Rainier Ave Radio that I find is very important. And Tony, I was having a conversation with him one day, and he was like, I would love for you to be on the Rainier Ave Radio. And I was like, you know what, Tony, it'd be a pleasure for me to be a guest on your show. And he was like, no, I would like for you to host your own show. And, you know, understanding these things with calling, when you're called upon, I took it as a calling, and I immediately accepted the particular offer of that. And I particularly already had an idea of centering the voices of those in community. And so that's essentially how the title comes up, Centering Voices with Blaze. I'm centering the voices of the individuals that I interview and are from community. And I like to say that all my guests is special because all my guests are from community.
Yeah, you know, the beauty, I think, of it too. I mean, now I got to experience this. I was on the show not too long ago and got to experience not only your hospitality, but your approach, right? And you come from someone who you learned a lot. You have done a lot and applied a lot of the knowledge to not just helping yourself, but helping others, right?
Yes.
And so that's something that I feel you were carrying forward in the ways that you were not only booking your guests, but then getting them to explain how they too are using their skills to help others. Tell us a bit about the importance of that from your perspective.
Absolutely. I think that for us and for community members and the work that we do is so much care and so much labor going into the work. We don't realize like how extraordinary we are just simply with the resilience of what we come from historically and where we're at and how we're progressing. Yeah. And so what I've recognized is that while we're all caught up in the work, there's never really a time and space to share each other's narratives as far as where we come from, how do we got to this place of where we're doing the work, what we're passionate about, and where our areas of focus is from, and what the vision of what we see in the events that we have going on. And so what I've discovered is just in that simple form of opening up a space to center that particular person, to center their origin story of where they come from in the community, how they've grown or whatever area of focus that they're in, of how they originated to get there and what they're currently doing, and then what they have going moving forward to connect community and expose. What I learned is it's a very empowering experience just for individuals to get another perspective or context of themselves. Yeah. And so what I love about the show is that once, I know it for sure, when I bring y'all into the studio and we go in there, and I know from before when you come out, it's kind of like the Matrix, in the first Matrix with the Oracle. Like, you know, once you eat this cookie, everything's gonna feel better. It's gonna be a different experience. And so that's what I love about the show, because I love that when community members get to share their story, share their narrative, share their hard work, and then get to see themselves and see their story, and then know that everybody else can see them, families and friends and colleagues and individuals that they contribute to, didn't necessarily get the time to just focus on them and their particular perspective and how they do the work, just how great and how powerful that is, and how empowering it is for individuals, even if they don't necessarily do media, but understand how powerful their voice is and the work is. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I find is just such a rewarding experience for doing the show.
Well, I'm glad that you said yes to Tony B and that you stepped up to the plate to take on this venture amongst all the other work that you are doing. You are a father, you are a husband, you are a community organizer, an advocate, an activist. So much that you're bringing back into community, and now Centering Voices is a part of that. What are some things folks can expect for maybe some of your upcoming guests and how you're going to continue to center voices on your show?
What they can expect is, again, just a lot of community members, just everybody local, a lot of individuals doing the work. I'm interested in doing some on-site interviews as well. Like, we're just in the studio right now in Columbia City Theater, but I look forward to, getting interviews and capturing my guests doing the work on site. or wherever they're doing and incorporating that into the show. I'm looking to do some remote work as well, so that I'm not just limited to necessarily having individuals being booked and having to physically show up, but to have access needs for individuals to show up remotely. And also, you know, it's Rainier Avenue World and it's centeringvoices.world. And so I look to ultimately also interview not only individuals from our community doing community work, but individuals and our people from other communities doing work in the community as well, all over the world. So that's where I see, and I understand that it's just in the nascent phase, 7 episodes in. I'm totally new to this. I'm totally figuring out the kinks and you know, missteps and how I can just refine my approach in particularly doing this particular work. But that's what I ultimately, you know, my goals and aspirations is for it to be worldwide, for us to be on the map locally, worldwide, and then expose the world to us as well.
There we go, Blaze. Oh, I love it. Of course, if folks are trying to tap in, they want to listen in and make sure they are staying plugged in to Centering Voices, look right there. Let them know how they stay connected.
Absolutely. So this is Blaze. I'm on Rainier Avenue Radio. My show is Centering Voices with Blaze. You can find me on RainierAvenueRadio.world. You can find me on most, or if not all, major platforms: Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. I'm a YouTube person myself as far as joining the show. And then you can find me on Instagram at Centering Voices.
All right, Blaze, thanks so much for joining me today. Keep up the great work, my friend.
And thanks, sis. I appreciate being here. Thank you.
Of course. Yo, I'm telling you, this is exactly why we got to love the explosion of us owning our narrative and sharing our stories. Y'all, I'm going to wrap all this up right after this short break. Stay tuned. You're watching A Day with Trae.
Big Tobacco thinks they know everything. They think they know you, your community, the places you go, and the way that you spend your time. They think they got you all figured out, down to a formula, a calculation based off of numbers of what they think they know. Show them they're wrong. Learn more at theythinktheyknowyou.org.
Hello, welcome to Elite Insights with Carlos Humani. We're looking to offer an in-depth look at event production industry through the lens of client experiences and joint successes. The podcast will emphasize guest interviews, focusing on client, discussing their fields, and reflecting on their collaboration with Elite Collective. Again, you're with Elite Insights. Carlos Humani here. See you guys in a few.
All right. Welcome back, y'all, to The Day with Trae. I'm your host, Trae Holiday. Huge shout out to my guest today, Gary Hammond, known as Jubal in the music scene, and of course, Blaze Vincent, both of them sharing some important information. First off, there is a huge history here that we often don't tap into enough, and I appreciate Gary's perspective and his lived experience through that history, not only because he was a musician and is one, but also because he grew up in that era. So he's here to give us some guidance on how we can stay tapped in. You know, he said support the arts, and I support that message 100%. We all have to do our part, and it sounds like, and it is so true, that Blaze Vincent is doing his part, as we just heard here today. Y'all, you know, he said, let me step up to the plate. Let me find a way to center the voices of those that I'm around and those that I know are doing great work here, not only in the Seattle metro area, but he's looking to expand to the world. I support that 100% because there's so many amazing people doing great work. And this is your chance, y'all. Be inspired, because you could be one of those folks. If you're not already, think about some of the things that you are really interested in, where your talents naturally lie, and maybe how you can pour in to the greater community around you. Because honestly, when you bring your gifts out for all of us to share, we all get to benefit from them. Y'all, for me, thanks so much for watching today. And until tomorrow at 11 a.m., peace. Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.